What mobility do you need for the squat? We're going to be covering 3 areas of the body. We're going to start with the ankle, we're going to work our way up to the hips, and then the thoracic spine. We're going to talk through what mobility we need, why we need it, and when it's being used during the squat, and how it affects different techniques or outcomes when you perform the squat exercise. If you're struggling with range of movement and you do need some help, you're in the UK, just click the link below. You'll go through to my mobility workshops, which are 2-hour workshops, where you come to me, see me in the gym, and we go through full consultation, assessment, and then I'll take you through the workshop to build and improve mobility for whatever reason. It could be a squat, it could be a deadlift, it could be everyday life, it could just be that you're experiencing a lot of tightness and you just need the greater range of movement. So if you are struggling with mobility, then please do just click the link below and we can get you more mobile. Part 1 is ankle range of movement. Now, ankle range of movement, as is all of the others, with regards to performing the squat correctly, it's all about centre of gravity and how that is shifting, because that will pull the body into certain positions. So when we're talking about ankle range of movement, we're talking about dorsiflexion, which is, if I just go down onto one knee, which is that movement there. Now, what you do here is a lot of coaches say you shouldn't take the knees over the toes. There is nothing wrong with taking the knees over the toes. It just needs to be done in the right way for the right person at the right time. So if you've got someone who's just come off the back of a knee injury of whatever, or whatever it may be, then it's probably more advantageous to keep it back, just to reduce the stress in the acute phase of the knee injury. But again, in the rehabilitation, that will be a part of the rehabilitation. So with regards to the ankle range of movement that we need, it's the dorsiflexion and it's allowing the knee to go over the toe. But what we also need, there is also elements of foot pressure as well. So we need the foot, the pressure through the foot to be sort of, in some respects, centered through it all. But essentially, it's the knee going essentially over the toes or in front of the toes, if you will. And what that allows to happen, that brings the hip forward. And then what that allows is the hip range of movement to be optimized. So if we can get good range of movement at the ankle, then we're going to be improved and it's going to help the hip with its range of movement. If we've got poor range of movement at the ankle, we're going to need more range of movement at the hip, if that makes sense. And if we've got more range of movement at the hip, we can not have as much at the ankle, because essentially all the body wants to do is get the hips forward, so the centre of gravity is sitting over the heels. Again, that allows us to get proper foot pressure, it allows us to grip the floor, so on and so forth. So there's all these different types of aspects when it comes to getting the knees over the toes, as it were. So what that will look like in a squat, if I just do a very simple goblet squat, is as we squat down, if we've got good ankle range of movement, so we allow the knees to go forward, we basically come down. Again, that brings my hips forward, which then allows me to bring my chest up in that position. Now, if I don't have good range of movement at the ankle, so if I get to about there and then it blocks, so I can't get my knees any further forward than this, then what's going to happen is as I go down, I'm going to need to bring my body forward to create what the ankles aren't doing. So that, instead of my knees coming forward, bringing my whole body forward, because I can't get any further forward, I have to come down here to bring the centre of gravity forward, because the body's reading that centre of gravity to keep you upright. That's all it's doing. So there are some people that have adequate range of movement, they just don't use it correctly. So they might have good ankle range of movement and they come down, but because they aren't using it correctly, they can't get the chest up. So whenever they squat, they might be coming down and folding forwards. But you have to understand whether you have the necessary range of movement at the ankle to get down that far. You've then got other variables like limb length and things like that. That will all come into it. But it's understanding, have you got the ankle range of movement that you need to perform the squat correctly? If you haven't, you need to get it. If you do have it, you need to use it. So it's just understanding that. But that is essentially the role of the ankle and how it works with the hip and how it can affect the upper spine. The second joint that we're going to look at is range of movement at the hip. Now, we're going to be talking about hip flexion and hip external rotation. Those are the two we need to get down deeper into the squat, and I'll explain why as we go. So again, if we go back to what we talked about with the ankle, and it's all about the centre of gravity with regards to the body. So the body's trying to keep it over the feet. If it goes back, we're going to fall backwards. If it goes too far forwards, we'll fall forwards. So what the body's trying to do is trying to optimise it and balance that. So when we're talking about hip flexion, what we're talking about is that position of the hip. When we talk about external rotation, it's that position and that position. So we need good hip flexion and external rotation. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Obviously, the hip flexion allows you to get down in the squat and maintain a proper posture of the spine. So as we flex the hip, obviously the ankles are going to be working with this, because as I mentioned before, if you've got good ankle range of movement, you can have less range of movement at the hip. If you've got more range of movement at the hip, it can mean you can have less range of movement at the ankle and things like that. So it's always optimizing, and there is a balance to it. Again, a variable on that will be limb length and sort of socket depth and so on and so forth. But when we're talking about squatting and hip flexion, what we want to be able to do is flex the hip enough to get down into that position. So again, if we haven't got that hip flexion, if we can't get into this position, we're going to struggle to get down in here, because there's going to be a block. Now, what can happen if a block is there is you will come down and you'll basically round your back. And again, a part of that is again to get that centre of mass or centre of gravity to come forward, so you can then keep upright. So what we want to be able to do is get down into that hip flexed position. Now, we need external rotation to go with that. And the reason we need external rotation is because it can reduce the length from the hip to the knee. Now, obviously, we've got a femur there. So let's just say that that is 50 centimetres long or 40 centimetres long or whatever it is. So if it's straight like that, it's obviously 40 centimetres. But if I keep this thumb here, but if I go out like that and I then externally rotate, it's going to knock off maybe, I don't know, a half a centimetre or a centimetre of that length, because it's going from here to here. So now the length from there to there is slightly less. So obviously the femur is still the same length, but the distance from the knee to the hip is slightly shorter, if that makes sense, if we take it down here. And that again allows us to get further down in. So as we go down, we push the knees out. That's going to help with the foot pressure. It's going to help with the gripping of the floor. So we get down into position, knees go out, and we can sit in this position nice and easily. So knees are out, feet are flat on the floor, good hip flexion. Knees are sort of over or in front of the toes, which is no problem at all. And then we can sit in that position, no problem. So not only do we need good hip flexion to get down into the position, but we need good external rotation to allow that distance to be slightly less. The other thing that you can get, which I've done in previous videos, is as you come down in this position, obviously if I've got a narrow stance, what's going to happen is my femur is going to knock into the front of my pelvis. So if I come down like that and I go externally rotate, I can drop down a little bit further, because I'm physically moving the femur out of the way of the pelvis as it goes into that flex position. So if I'm here, but if I go here, I've got a little bit more. So I can get down into that position a little bit more effectively. So again, there's the process of understanding, do you have the range of movement of the hip? Do you have good hip flexion? Do you have good hip external rotation? There will also be an element of internal rotation that will need to come with that, but for now we'll just focus on flexion, external rotation. If you don't have it, you need to get it. And if you do have it, you need to start using it and understanding how to use it. Because again, if you've got all the range of movement that you need, but your femur keeps banging into your pelvis like that, you need to get the external rotation in there to get it out the way. So with regards to range of movement at the hip, when to get down into the squat, you need hip flexion, which is here, and external rotation, which is here. Finally, we're talking about the thoracic spine or the upper back. and we need extension here. Now, some people will say you need to have extra range of movement. So for example, if we go back to the first example, when we don't have good range of movement at the ankle, what you may find is that as you come down, you sort of round your back, and then they'll be saying you need to get, because your back's rounded, you need to get that extra range of movement. But if we've got adequate range of movement at the ankle and we know how to use it, what should happen is we should just automatically go into the position, like so. So we go into that position and we don't need extra range of movement. If you have a kyphotic posture, then you will need extra range of movement. So again, you have to determine, do you have that range of movement? So as you go down, does your chest stay up? Now again, as I've mentioned, the chest can go down for a number of reasons. It could be because there's inadequate range of movement at the hip, which is causing the spine to round and causing the chest to roll in like that. You may have the range of movement at the thoracic spine. That could be easily understood by doing a few different tests. So you've got that. So it's not the problem with the thoracic spine. It's a problem possibly from the hip or possibly from the ankle. Because again, as I mentioned before, what is happening is as you go down, you come down into this position, and then for whatever reason, be it the ankle or the hip, the body comes forward, and that's causing the rounded part of the spine. So you don't need to strengthen the upper back. You don't need to gain extra range of movement of the upper back. You just need to get that position or that good use of the ankle and the hip, which will then automatically keep you up in that position. Now I'm cheating a little bit because I've got a weight that's holding my centre of gravity forward. But again, if I do it body weight, you can get down in. If you've got a weight on the back, you can get down in, so on and so forth. So first of all, what we have to understand is the range of movement that we do need, which is the thoracic extension. Then, as with the other two parts, we need to understand whether we've got that or whether we're just not using it. So to summarise what we've talked about what mobility you need for the squat. We've started with the ankle. We've also talked about the hip. So we need ankle dorsiflexion, I should say. We need hip flexion and external rotation. There could be, depending on whether you're talking about the different movements of the foot as well, you may need a little bit of supination at the feet as well. So, you can go into that with the foot if you want to. But then you also need that thoracic extension. So it's ankle dorsiflexion, hip flexion and external rotation, and thoracic spine extension. But as I've mentioned, what you need to be able to do is establish whether you have that range of movement to start with and whether you're just not using it. But if you don't have it, you need to create that range of movement, because all the squat is trying to do and all the body is trying to do is stay upright, and it's using your centre of gravity to do that, and the range of movement that you have is influencing how your body's moving. So if you've got greater ranges of movement and you can use it correctly, your centre of gravity will stay where it needs to be and your squat will look that much more effective. If you've liked the content that I've shared with you today, please do click the like button below, click the subscribe button and the bell icon, and you'll be notified when I release more videos. Also, leave a comment below. Let me know what you've learned. Let me know if you've got any questions about anything that I've said in this tutorial. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris. I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.